an American, an assimilated American. He, there's a poignant moment in the book where Preet's father calls him up and says, why did you arrest Rajat Gupta on Diwali, the holiest of Indian holy days? And Preet says, I didn't know it was Diwali. Their past,
In a way,
perhaps in a way, back to the shame idea.
yeah. In a way, though, that speaks to the whole notion of America, right?
Right.
That it's a melting pot, and when you go there, you become American, as opposed to the multicultural model, which is that you keep, you hang on to your culture, and then the mainstream culture changes as a result of the combination and the confluence of these many different voices.
Actually, we were talking about this, Tash and I were talking about this versus London versus New York, right?
Yeah, and how I mean, to me, I haven't, I've spent a certain amount of time, not a huge amount of time in New York, but the idea of the lure and the romance of New York is much greater than, say, London is for the foreigner. And my experience is that foreigners who move to New York want to become New Yorkers. There is a certain glamour, there is a certain a pull in becoming a New Yorker and therefore becoming an American, whereas there is no such thing in London. And people, you go there and your first language remains Igbo or anything else. And I think they're two very different models. And I still haven't, I haven't figured out which is the better. For me personally, it's just easier for me to go to somewhere and not have to drop all my cultural baggage.
Okay, I'm just going to ask one more question, and I'm going to ask that that you ready the mics for some questions for the audience, so that we can and whoever wants to ask questions, if they could just stand up so that the people within the mic can know. I just want to know what would Phoebe have thought? Can you channel her for a second of thought of Rajaratnam?
Oh, that's a difficult
or
one.
maybe Gupta.
Okay,
all right.
I think Gupta is a better one. I think.
All right.
This is to remind people in the audience, she's the real, genuine, fake, handbag-loving, very regressive, but somehow still lovable character, I think.
Hope she gets a handbag.
She does. But there is a twist in the handbag tale. I think they would be a real catch. I think they would be a total catch. I think they would represent everything that she superficially is looking for. But, as the novel goes on, I think she discovers that the story and the search is much more nuanced than that, and the whole question and nature of ambition is much more nuanced and much more complex, and it does ultimately involve love.
Okay, and just before we go to questions, I know you wanted to say something about, or rather I wanted you to say something about right to reconcile.
Okay, well,
just tell us.
You wanted me to say something.
Yes,
I
did.
didn't want to say.
Okay.
I think
we both want. I think you deep down you wanted to say something, and I recognized it.
I usually talk about it, but I'm trying to get participants for it. I'm doing a project in Sri Lanka called Right to Reconcile, WRITE, to reconcile, in which I bring together 24 participants from the various warring factions, and do creative writing workshops with the idea that we'll create a literature that is sort of about the war and the post-war phase. And the reason I do it is because I think that each of the communities have their single story in which they are the victims. And I wanted to sort of, what I think that creative work can do, whether fiction or poetry or not, creative nonfiction, is to look at the grays in a situation and how the grays play into the situation, and how we're all in some sense responsible for what happened in Sri Lanka. And so I've done one anthology of their work, and it's really fabulous stuff. And working with the students was a most incredible experience for me. And now I'm doing a second, doing it once again towards a second anthology.
Okay, thank you, Shyam. That's right, to reconcile, WRITE. Does anybody have a question? Yes, I think there's a gentleman over there in the striped shirt. Oh, there's some. I'm sorry. Okay, well, I didn't see. Sorry about that. Yeah, sure.
Hello. This question is for Shyam. let me take this opportunity to tell you that for the past 4 years, I have been teaching Funny Boy to the students here in the PG course, and by now we do consider it as a queer classic, I mean, in India at least. And I would also like to ask you a question that I was in Sri Lanka a few months back, and I wanted to know that how difficult it is for a writer who identifies himself as queer to survive in Sri Lanka and write, because it is easy to write from a distance, for instance from Toronto. But while you are located in Sri Lanka, is it easy to write? Because when I was there, I didn't find people, I mean, ready to speak about the issue also, and it is so underground and so undercover. So how do you kind of negotiate with this, this 365A being there and the civil unrest which refuses to stop? So, how difficult or easy for queer literature to survive?
Just quickly, 365, that
the
law
sodomy
is-
law,
yes,
the sodomy
yes,
law.
okay. Now go ahead.
Well, I came out in 1994, and I was the first person in Sri Lanka to ever come out. And I did it because I'd written this book in which the character happened to be gay, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous and coy for me to pretend I wasn't gay. This was long before it was fashionable to be gay in the fashionable circles. I don't really know how I do it, to be honest with you. I'm not really a very brave person, and I'd rather have not had to do it. But I don't know. I think sometimes destiny offers you or casts something at you, and you have to take it and run with it. It sort of feels like living with a sword above my neck, a hanging sword, and I'm not sure when it's going to fall. But I've seen it fall, and it falls spectacularly when it does fall. And I just, I don't know, I just keep going. I guess that's how I see it, and I owe something to the people who, you see, I'm very privileged, okay? And I think with privilege comes great responsibility. With great privilege comes great responsibility. And I am privileged, and I feel that because I'm privileged, because fate has made me privileged, I have great responsibility that I have to do this because other people don't have that privilege. And so I just do it. And so far I manage, and the book is taught there in the universities, and it is loved. And I go to the universities quite a bit to talk to the students. And it's a revelatory book for them, and it opens their eyes to what it might be like to be queer. That in itself, as a writer, to be able to do that is sort of a gift in a way. So I'm not really, I don't know how to answer the question any other way.
Thank you, Shyam. Next question.
Well, that seems to be a nice place for me to launch a thank you to Shyam in this environment, because Shyam has been a very, very loved visitor to my class on Asian diasporic literature in Canada at the University of Toronto. And what I would like to mention here is that I teach this course with the idea of bringing out the students, the undergraduates in the course, who are stunned that there are Asian diasporic writers in North America who are dealing with daily issues which second generation and third generation Asians fight every day on a generational level at home. And I want to go back to an issue that all three of you brought up, which was shame, persecution, and punishment within the family. And I think that is probably the reason why I'm so enthused to be here in my, in the city that I was born, and to have come back and to see that it's the same issues which we deal with here, that generational, second, third, fourth generational students are dealing with in North American universities, who are either immigrants or refugees, or are, just plain immigrants. And one of the ways out for students who are queer in my class.
Can I ask Tash to just answer your question about shame? Okay.
Sure. I just want to finish this point.
Okay, sorry.
Sujoy, the reason I want to bring this out is there's a dearth of this kind of literature which is taught in courses on diasporic literature in North America. So I think it's important to underline that the work that you guys are doing, art for its own art's sake, for its own sake is fine, but it's also serving a huge social purpose within the community of the diaspora in North America. So thank you for that, Tash.
Thank you. I'm not sure there was a question to
I-
answer, but just in general terms, I think it's always very nice to receive comments like that, to feel that one's work has a social impact, because well, no matter how tiny it is, or even if a 17 or 18-year-old is able to read a work of fiction or non-fiction and locate themselves in it, is essentially why writers write. And I never cease to be amazed by that, because actually it's everyone here knows who's ever tried to write anything, be it fiction or non-fiction, when you're confronted with the blank page, actually achieving any sort of social impact at all is totally beyond your scope of ambition. Since we're talking about ambition, what you're trying to do is just to relate a story in its most basic and simplest form, and quite often that story draws on what you yourself have lived. And so it's always rather wonderful to know that actually it does have something, it does touch people beyond that.
Okay, in the interest of time, can we have one more question? Yes, and if you could get to the question very quickly, if possible.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my question to Tash Aw. You're talking about Chinese girls whose whole ambition is to buy the expensive designer bag. Now, recently I met a guy from China, Shanghai, and as he said, we are living much better than what our parents used to do. As a journalist, I just wanted to ask him, why poverty level and rich, getting bigger, or press freedom, he just skirted away from the issue. Then he said, being the curious Indian woman, I asked, are you married? He said, no, my mom is looking for a bride. I said, is it very difficult to get a bride? Yeah, girls don't want to get married nowadays. And then I remember the BBC serial where one episode was in Singapore. Apparently, Singaporean government is very worried that they are not getting married. They are giving all paid cruises for young people to throw them together.
And so your question...
No, I'm asking,
okay.
is it? No, the question comes here. Out of 50 couples,
okay.
2 got married. And they said, no, Chinese guys are so chauvinistic, we don't want to get married. So is it only about money or the family?
I think it's very complicated. I've been on one of those cruises, not as a participant, I have to add, but as an observer. Singapore and China are very different countries, but I think as society changes, I think Chinese-based, Confucian-based societies are changing so rapidly, and China in particular is changing incredibly rapidly, that it can't be seen through the lenses of Western liberalism. I think it's a difficult question, and I think we'll see it being played out over the next few years.
Okay, another question. If I can ask you to very quickly ask the question. We have no more questions. All right. Well, I want to thank these 3 acclaimed authors. You can buy their books at the bookstall, which is located just near the gate. And this has been a really it's been a very interesting session from the standpoint of both the idea of ambition, the idea of happiness, the idea of family, and what we carry with us, perhaps without even knowing, and how it feeds into our goals and our view of life. So thank you very much, Tash Aw, Anita Raghavan, Shyam Selvadurai, and thank all of you for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Kolkata Literary Meet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.